Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again to talk about all the latest and greatest Activision news. Just got back to the gym, got a shower, and I'm ready to start talking about what's been going down. Today, the day of days, Activision stock has recovered mightily with about a 25-30% bump in the share price in one singular day. And that might look, well and good if you're into Bitcoin or crypto or whatever, but that just does not happen with stocks, especially not those in the S&P 500. So, today, after suffering just calamitous drops in share price from their high of about $103 all the way down to 57, about half of their share price erased in about a 6 to 8 month period, they're recovering. And that is based off the back of the news that Microsoft is going to be acquiring good old Activision Blizzard for a whopping $69 billion. All right. Which, of course, represents about 3% of the market cap for Microsoft. Okay? And, as it turns out, Microsoft did lose, whoa, look at that, 2.5% and everything like that. Because whenever they're burning this cash, there is going to be that sort of reaction, of course, by the shareholders for that acquisition. It's not that the shareholders of Microsoft are unhappy that they acquired it. It's just that there is going to be a natural price adjustment as a result. That being said, why didn't Activision stock fully correct to $95? It's because this deal isn't going to happen until about 2023. Jason Schreier, of course, reporting that it's going to be around 2023, ending June 30th, is while they're waiting for those regulatory approvals and everything. And we'll talk about a bit of those as well. But I wanted to make this video to recap this news very quickly, which we've all heard about, and also give everybody a bit of a wake-up call, because I've seen some disastrous takes on Twitter, as this is just such a great win that Bobby's leaving and everything like that. And, it could be, but to say that Bobby isn't actually putting up a massive dub throughout this is just so terribly wrong, okay? So, regulatory concerns that they have to deal with, because as a result of this purchase, Activision, the second largest video game creator in North America, they were eclipsed by Roblox or something like that, some kids gaming thing, very recently. They're now being eaten up by Microsoft, one of the largest companies in the world at the moment, which now they have Microsoft just as this titan going up against Tencent, of course, China with Riot, Arcane, all their great hits and everything like that that are going on. And Amazon is, of course, working on gearing up their video game sections, but they're nowhere near as big as some of the competitors at the moment. But they certainly got the money, they certainly got the backing, especially with something like Twitch, which is going to be running them, or which is a key component of their company, right? So, as we mentioned, 2023 looks to be the date, so the stock price is not fully corrected to that point. It's likely that a lot of shareholders will be paid in Microsoft shares as a result of it, and they'll be converted and everything at that price. Personally, I own 73 shares of Activision Blizzard. The last video I did for you guys, I also mentioned I bought call options. They're basically a bet. It's like, I bet the share price will be this high at this point. And I actually sold them because they were going in a pretty bad direction around the time that we were talking about it. So I decided to cash out. But if I had held them, about the $500 that I spent in call options would be worth almost $3,000 today. So I missed out on $2,500 of profit, but you don't diamond hand options. So, unless I know the future, which I don't, unfortunately, it's not a good play to do. So we still have a lot of time for Activision's price to go higher or lower, but from a technical analysis standpoint, where the voodoo, people are assuming it's going to correct a little bit and not go crazy higher in the short term. So, as you can see, the short-term bearish signal is flying there on Yahoo. So we'll see. I might re-enter my position, but right now I cashed out of all my shares, and I don't own any call options. Now, this is not some loss or anything like that for Bobby Kotick. Bobby Kotick has all these articles from November about, I'll step down if I can't finish the fix the problems. The big SOC, which owns, I don't know, like 20 shares or something of the company. Yeah, geez, They definitely, this is 0.61% of Activision Blizzard shares. We're really concerned. You should step down. Back here in 11/17, November 17 for you Euro bros. Doesn't matter. Polygon. Bobby Kotick must resign. November 16th. We got walkouts at Activision. There's currently a strike ongoing over the layoffs at Raven. Bobby Kotick actually won. Okay? He ran out the clock. The disaster at Blizzard happened at the best possible time for him with the holiday season, with a lot of tech companies. Part of their culture is they usually take off a lot of time during the holiday season. There's really not much going on. So having a walkout or a strike at a time where productivity isn't super high in the company, shockingly didn't go far. We even have like the fundraiser that went on for the strikes, raised about $300,000, but that strike doesn't seem to be having a massive material impact on the production of their games. You know, we haven't heard of any impacts or anything like that. We're not seeing Overwatch 2 or Diablo 4 or anything getting cited as saying, hey, work's slowing down because strikes. None of that. None of that, quite frankly. And I'm not saying this to poo-poo on the employees because I support them. You know, and I want them to make sure they're getting paid what they owe. I want them to feel safe at the workplace and everything. But I want to highlight this point because bad people can really get away with a lot of bad things. And it's really just all about the money. So this deal, though, was a perfect opportunity for Microsoft. Let's see. Here we have our interview on CNBC, where Phil Spencer, Bobby Kotick are talking to the talking heads on CNBC and talking about how this deal really came together. We're not going to watch the entire video. It'll be linked in the description if you want to watch it. But Phil Spencer even says, hey, this deal like happened really quickly. And he super dodges the question where the interview was asking, hey, did this happen because they lost like 60% of their share price in like a 6-month period? So you could snap up all those shares for free? And he completely dodges it. And you might say, well, why are they buying it for $95 if the share price was like 50 or 60 or anything like that? It's because of the shareholders. They're always, whenever there's like these merger companies of healthy companies, mind you, healthy companies, they're always going to be buying for much higher than the share price to be able to give those shareholders a decent return, right? Those who have held on for a very long time, right? Hey, maybe they're going to break even or something like that. But keep in mind, if you zoom out, even if you bought at the highest of highs in 2018 at $83, you're still coming out with some profit and everything here, right? So the only time is, yeah, maybe some of these guys are going to get a little screwed. They bought in at 103 or something like that. But that's why you buy the fucking dip. Just like me. Right? So that's because of the shareholders. So imagine if they were buying at $103, their all-time high, they'd have to be paying $120, $130 plus to be able to make sure they're still giving shareholders a good return and everything. So that's why they're going after that. Furthermore, there are a couple other interesting things in this interview. One of the biggest things is about the harassment of the company. Of course, Phil Spencer did release a statement saying we're looking into our relationship with Blizzard. We'll see what's going on, da-da-da. Now here he is taking it over. So let's watch this quick clip when we start talking about harassment, of course, for Bobby Kotick.
Bobby, there have been a series of reports in the Wall Street Journal that raise questions just about sexual harassment at the company and how it's been handled. Those reports have kind of questioned whether you've really looked into some of these reports. What would you say to that?
All right, that is by far the most softball way of throwing it in there. They're so gentle and so safe about asking the question, and because they know that at this point Bobby's gotten away with it.
Well, of course, any issue of harassment or discrimination is something that I would take seriously and do.
Yeah.
And like many companies today, we had some challenges, but we have worked through them. We are committed. I can tell you it's a focus of mine, and we continue to improve the culture with the expectation of being the very best, most inclusive workplace culture.
Hey, Phil, just to follow up on that, this is something that you had kind of said at the time. You put out a memo internally saying that you were concerned about these reports. My guess is you guys have looked into this and you feel good about this if you are going ahead with this deal.
You know, culture is a journey for any workplace. It's something at Team Xbox we've been focused on for for quite a long time. Obviously going through the due diligence process, talking to the leadership team at Activision Blizzard about the plan they're already implementing. We look forward to supporting them in that plan through the closing of this deal. And then post-close, we know that the most important thing to a creative organization is that the employees feel safe, they feel heard, so they can do their best work. There's nothing that's more important to us.
Right? So they go out of their way to say, hey, we looked at our due diligence, we looked at what's going on. And another way of saying this is, we looked at the material risk of Activision Blizzard's lawsuits and the effect on the company. We decided, it's no big deal, and this is an undervalued company that we could really snap up and get a very big gain in the process. Further on throughout the interview, they cite that the metaverse, you know, Facebook's big virtual reality program and everything like that, is a very big reason for why they're making this purchase. When the interview brought up the undervaluation factor, Phil immediately dodges it and just says, oh, you know, metaverse and our investment in the gaming, we love gaming, yada, 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 right? And the reason they go through all these softball-y questions is because they know that Bobby has dodged the bullet. The heat is off of him. The strikes, the walkouts didn't have their full effect. They didn't have the longevity because, again, it's really hard to be able to organize a strike, not get paid, and still pay your rent in Southern California, where tons of their employees live. And he ran out the clock, and of course, he is going to make an absolute ridiculous amount of money in the process. Previously in the article, we mentioned there was going to be some of the regulatory approvals that they have to be working on. And Phil Kramer, of course, of Mad Money, goes further on into this interview and says, oh, you know, what do you think about, you know, these regulatory things? There's so many game companies. It's probably no big deal, right? So they're already setting the stage of the court of public opinion to be able to say, hey, the Free Trade Commission, don't worry about this. This is totally fine. Don't really stress or look into this too terribly much because this deal, you know, it's going to go through. It's going to be good for everybody. And that, honestly, puts together a lot of risk for just the future of companies. And the larger that a lot of these corporations get, the larger a lot of these companies get, the harder that they are to audit, and the easier that companies are going to be able to get away with fraud or negligence or just, you know, making mistakes. So it's incredibly, incredibly scary, I think, for the average person. You know, many of us, like myself, didn't really know much about what was going on during Enron and anything, but the large risk of having these massive, massive conglomerates just owning everything and trying to audit every little bit of those businesses is very scary. But of course, we live in a world where our regulators, the FTC, the SEC, all these other government organizations, they really don't give that much of a shit. And I think that the interviewers know this as well, which is why they're kind of softballing these questions in. So, how big of a deal is it for Microsoft, who has $69 billion to be able to throw at something? And keep in mind, it's not like, oh, we're paying $69 billion over this much period. Microsoft, in their latest report in September 30th of 2021, said that they have $130 billion in cash or short-term equivalents. Those would be like treasury bonds and everything like that, right? And that's a buck ton of money. So they've burned through about half of their cash that they have on hand, just like that. They say, oh yeah, just like that, we're going to be fine, right? Without any sort of issue whatsoever. That being said, right, they have a quick ratio of about 2, which is fantastic. They have, obviously, tons and tons of liabilities and debt and everything. But relative to their assets, their cash, they are sitting very, very pretty. And, of course, Microsoft's just a money-printing machine through and through. It's not like they're going to stop charging people for Microsoft Office and Microsoft Teams and all the other things that they're going to be able to produce. And this has really been one of the biggest points for Microsoft over the years is Microsoft doesn't really have a lot of crazy, super in-house innovations and everything like that. They have some, but one of the biggest things that they can do is snap up these companies that may not have great balance sheets, but have great ideas or great copyrights, and then be able to integrate them into their programs and continue developing them. In the case of Activision, they actually have a fantastic balance sheet. They had billions on hand. They had a quick ratio. Quick ratio is like if you had to pay all your debts immediately, how well can you do that? And they had like a quick ratio of like 3. They had so much cash, so many assets on hand. They weren't worried about increasing interest rates from the Federal Reserve, increasing the cost that would of capital, cost it takes to be able to borrow money or anything like that. They had cash for days. And they were going to be able to see their way through these problems. But when you have large daddy like Phil Spencer and Microsoft ready to snap you up, and you're facing tons and tons of controversy that you're trying to slowly get away from, of course you're going to be able to take that jump, and that's what Bobby Kotick did. Now, of course, this means that he's going to get a massive, massive payday, all right? The Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday that Kotick will depart the business after the deal closes. If he does, he will not leave empty-handed, as he holds nearly 4 million shares of Activision Blizzard, which would be worth almost $400 million at the acquisition price. And he could still reap millions more from long-term stock incentives that the Activision board controversially bestowed on him last year that could still transfer even if he leaves the company after the deal is done. His compensation has been a sticking point. Equilar Research determined that Kotick had received $461 million in total compensation since Activision merged with Blizzard parent company Vivendi Games in 2007, with more than $300 million of that total in stock. He was also promised another $150 in long-term awards in 2020, despite vocal opposition to the amount of compensation he was receiving the money. And terms of that deal suggest he could still get the money, even if he is asked to leave after the deal completes. Translation, he gonna get that money, okay? Especially from a company like Microsoft, which we already established, is swimming, absolutely swimming in cash on hand, okay? Absolutely. And this is a bit of a side rant and everything like that, but this is the real reason why Bobby Kotick wins. He has all this controversy, and he stretches it and delays it until it starts getting into the holiday season. Things are busy for their employees. Their employees don't have the capital. They don't have the resources to be able to stage an effective strike for the 800, 900 employees that they have, or something along those lines, and sustain it for an extremely long period of time. And that is one of the biggest stickler points, is that when you have these corporations which are so effective at shutting down unionization, shutting down strikes, walkouts, and everything like that, and they make it so that your solution is that you have to watch out for yourself, you are, as an individual, need to just jump jobs if they're not giving you a pay raise at your current job, and you are on your own, right? As a result of this, the people who were really wanting to fight, they've left for other jobs. They've gone for other jobs. They've stuck and stayed with their job and everything like that, and haven't made too much of a fuss because they can't afford to be able to go on strike for these very long periods of time. Bobby Kotick, as a result, has dodged all this dodged the consequences of the controversy, I should say, while acting as a perfect meat shield for all the bad things that are happening with the company. Now, this also is more of a reflection and everything like that of, excuse me, this is more of a private reflection, of course, of, you know, just international conglomerates and everything like that that are going on for many corporations. You know, the CEOs are these big meat shields and everything like that for a lot of the problems and the bad things that happen in the company. So while Bobby Kotick did something that is morally unethical, it doesn't matter to these corporations because it's all about the cash. Now, I would say it's not as bad as, say, ExxonMobil putting together their own private army to go kill civilians in Indonesia. But in the same vein, a lot of people are not going to be having a lot of consequences towards these things, because when it comes to corporations, you have this corporate media who is just going to softball some questions and not really worry about asking tough questions, and they're kind of just having a little victory lap as they say, oh yeah, the regulators won't be a problem. These sexual harassment lawsuits and everything, they won't be a problem. You've got so much cash on hand, Microsoft, you could pay whoever to shut up and go away and move on and everything like that. And finally, I did see some takes that were like, oh, well, is it really a win? Bobby already has infinity money. What more could he have utility for? And it's this. In the United States, we don't have any sort of aristocracy or royalty like the British or anything. But we do have this crazy technocrat class of society, which is just rich on rich on rich, and they will stay that way forever. Okay? Whenever Bobby Kotick dies, let's say he owns $400 million of Activision shares, right? If he sells them, then he is taxed on the cost basis. So, if, for example, he bought those shares, or sorry, he sells those shares at $95, but he only bought them at $30, then he's getting taxed on that $65 every single time. The $65 is always what he gets taxed on, right? Not the 35 or the entire 95, it's just the 65. Got it? But if he dies, the cost basis resets for his next of kin, those who inherit the money from him. So, if Wendy Kotick and everything like that inherits all these shares, she could go ahead and sell all that and get a cool $400 million at a reset cost basis if she sells immediately, and the price is still at $95, right? Or, you know, the price is maybe $100, so she's taxed in the 5% or the extra $5, right? And it is a ridiculous way that rich people are able to stay rich and keep their offspring rich for an incredibly long period of time, which fully allows them to borrow against those assets, borrow against that equity, and then just have an infinity pool of ruling class people and hyper wealthy people that have access to the best schools, the best networking, and get front row to be able to be in charge of the next big companies and leading different areas, right? And that's just more of, you know, something that happens with our society and everything today, is that, you know, the rich are going to stay rich, and they'll also raise and increase the barriers of entry into the marketplace through higher regulations to prevent new game companies from coming into it. When we talk about like regulatory concerns, a lot of times these big companies and everything like that cover their ass, just like a utility like Verizon or AT&T would. They make it a lot harder for other phone providers or internet service providers to be able to enter the marketplace and compete with them. So a lot of people are stuck with one or two options. Just wait until gaming has only a couple of options for who is actually making the games, and they're all going to have microtransactions, DLCs, incomplete games, bugs, the works, just like we're having now. It's only going to continue. So, how do you deal with it? Ride the wave! At least that's what I'm doing. If Activision pulls back, I'm going to probably buy a lot more of their stock and see if I can ride a bit of the volatility. If they sort of flatline a little bit, I'll move on to some other companies that I think are going to be more promising. Obviously, a company like Microsoft is going to be a fantastic long-term corporation, and they're going to continue to be able to eat up smaller companies as best they can to beef up their portfolio, beef up their diversity, so that no matter what, they're always going to be going up through and through. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any other questions or anything, feel free to hit me up in the comments down below. But I wanted to give my summary, see what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time.